Carson,
Here.
Ray Lapinus, Connie Machini,
Here.
Carolyn Schofield. Here. Lindsay Keisman.
Here. Are there any public comments?
That were sent ahead.
Where's the, oh,
Because there's
they're not doing anything? No, go ahead. Go ahead, Bobby, 3 minutes.
Short, I just wanted to come,
Hold on a
Do you
second.
wanna-
Here you go. This is our first committee meeting on these, so we're kind of.
Take it.
figuring
Oh, yeah.
this out.
okay.
So I guess we'll probably have to have.
I can test it out for you. Okay, I'll be brief, but I wanted to come and just share, to be fully transparent, since we applied for funding for New Directions, we had gotten news from 2 major grants that we were hoping for. It's very difficult to project and budget and staff when we are dealing with grants that may or may not come through, right? So I just wanted to share with the board, 3 years ago, we were very proud to get a SAMHSA federal grant that we managed very well, to the point that we were used as an example at SAMHSA conferences on how to run the B Corps program. So I was very confident that we would get renewed. Just before our application, they made a new criteria where agencies that had never been funded before were gonna get extra points scored on the NOFO. So needless to say, we didn't get renewed. We also found out that super funding that we thought was on the table is not actually available, at least for the next 2 years. And I've had, it was a frustrating process, but I went around and around with the state, and we were sort of led down a path that didn't lead anywhere. So we're building that relationship for future funding, but I wanted to share with the Mental Health Board that our housing program in particular is and really all of our social service programming is in more need of support right now than even anticipated when we applied. So I feel like our ask was conservative, and honestly, had we known what we know now, we probably would have asked for more. And I realize you guys have finite funding to give out. So I just wanted to share that so that you're informed fully when you make your decisions. And just share that with the board, and we're always extremely grateful for whatever support you can give. So thank you, guys.
Thanks, Bobby. Okay. All right, can we do an approval of the minutes? Somebody have a motion? Any discussion?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. All right. All right, treasurer's report for discussion, the finance report. Mel, do you have any discussion points you want to share with us?
Just, there's a few points in your packet about administrative expenses. So if anybody has any questions about that, then just kind of give you guys an update. Right now, I'm projecting between $400,000 and $500,000 of the fund balance that we had budgeted to be used at the end of the year. So that's about half of what we had budgeted. And it is subject to change, but that's kind of gives you an idea of where we're going to be at. We're not going to be adding to the fund balance, but we are going to only be using about half of what we had wanted to use. So that's all I really had to say.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, let's move on to the opioid fund finance report. Any particular takeaways on this one, Mel?
Not really much here. We got that big infusion of cash last month, and so now we're just kind of sitting for a while to see how it goes. Yeah, not much else to add.
And is that paid all at once for the farm?
No, it's multiple small payments that just kind of come in
Yeah.
at different times.
Yeah, the main distributors, the Johnson funding, that's the one that we know is consistent and we know what we're going to be getting. It's not consistent, but we know what we're going to be getting there. The pharmaceutical, companies. We're not sure when we're getting those. Also, the payouts, some of the pharmaceutical companies want to pay out it all at once. Some of them are paying it out in different various areas. So the pharmaceutical payouts are variable and in many ways. So that's one thing that, when we're making projections for the fiscal year, I think we're doing a pretty good job at projecting where we're going to be. But I think we'll always have a few more dollars that come in that we can probably use in that next fiscal year.
Right, that's kind of
if
the way
we
we're
need to.
working now.
Right.
Whatever we get in this year goes towards future funding, and we're kind of working off, prior year funding for future years rather than try to guess and not get the money.
Any other questions or discussion? If not, don't see any old business. Moving on to new business, 6A. This is our investment presentation. Very excited to have Donna, our county treasurer, here to present to us some investment options. And this started off as a conversation about our sort of overlap dollars and what we may or may not choose to do with them. And we asked Leo and Mel to meet with her to look at what the options are, and she's going to present some details and scenarios for us. So I'll turn it over for you.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. And Lindsay's mother is part of our team, so she actually helped with some of these numbers. So,
Fun.
I mean, what a great team you have. You know how great Lindsay is. You know how great Lindsay is, so you know how good her mom must be. So with that, I also have with myself Bill Gregg, and he's our new investment manager. I've known Bill for a number of years, and he brings some really great talent. So we'll talk about that. And, I don't need to say this to you, but please just stop if you need some explanation, or we'll have some Q&A. And I'm going to have questions for you at the end. This is not a one-way dialogue here. So with that, love this picture of McHenry County. And what we're going to talk about today is investment strategies and discussion for the McHenry County Mental Health Board. And I do want to say hi to a number of longtime friends, Ray, Carolyn, Connie. Great to see you guys. Of course, I know Bridget as well. So it's old home week for me when I come in this room and see you guys. I mean, many, many years of working together. And of course, Leo, it's great to see you. Thank you again for having us. So our agenda today. I thought that, Leo, you might like to talk a little bit about what's happening with the new tax revenues. Let me head you off at the pass. Before I left, I checked with my chief deputy. You don't have your money in yet.
Right.
So
We know that, yeah.
we're thinking, yeah, I figured. But we are always like sort of the first to know. Or at least we like to think we are. So October is when we're thinking that you're going to see that money, as you and I have talked. So I also want to introduce myself a little bit, but really largely have you kind of meet Bill as well. We both have some, I think, valuable experiences that I think would be very helpful to the Mental Health Board in the capacity that we think we can help. We want to reinforce the goal for today's meeting, talk about our general investment process, and our investment objectives, and then we want to leave you with an investment scenario. So you kind of get a flavor of, what's the good, the bad, and the ugly that comes from doing investing. So with that, I'm going to let Bill take a minute here to introduce himself.
Great, thanks, Donna. My name's Bill Gregg. I'm head of fixed income, senior partner in North Shore Private Asset Management out of Lake Forest, Illinois. In a nutshell, this is my 40th year in fixed income, so a lot of decades under the belt. I work with a lot of government entities such as yourselves, counties like Lake County, Madison County, St. Clair County, bringing institutional fixed income expertise to your doorstep. That is my mission in life these days for the rest of my days of my career. So happy to work with you guys, answer any questions, and looking forward to talking about investments.
Thank you, Bill. And then I just wanted to mention I have an investment background, nothing like Bill's, but it's enough to help me in asking the right questions. As Carolyn and Connie know, I was on the board. I served with Carolyn and was on the Public Health and Human Services Committee, as it was called in the day. You know, really got a good handle on the experiences of the Mental Health Board and the important role that you play in the community. And by the way, I do want to say MHB is really a crown jewel in what makes McHenry County special. And all of you are part of this great legacy that started right around the beginning of 1970s. With that, you know, I have some other financial background, et cetera. So our goal today is how can we help MHB financially to meet your mission of empowering minds and transforming lives? So let's first talk about our investment process. It is governed by law. It is governed by the Illinois Public Investment Act. So one, you have to invest county money through me. But the good news is that I can't invest it any old which way. I actually have to follow the law. And I also have an investment policy that matches up to this, and that is what I hold my investment manager accountable for. And then you see the types of investments that we can invest in. And these are the areas that we probably will be investing in. I also want to mention that we don't buy and sell for the most part. We may have a few, very few opportunities, but what we're going to do is we're going to buy the very best securities that are available in the market for the durations. And by the way, you're involved in that. You're going to give us a roadmap, and we'll talk about that in a second. And so given the requirements that I have legally, as well as the requirements that I work with my clients on, we then have a situation where we are buying securities that make us money, and we hold them until they mature. The investment objectives that we have, they are listed in the order of priority. And I think you'll all be glad to know that safety is the first of these investment objectives. So what that means is we are going to return principal. So what you give us, you're going to get back with interest. That is a requirement of the Public Investment Act. In addition, liquidity. How soon do you need that money? And we all know that there's an element of government that's a little like a grasshopper. It's always eating money. And what does that mean? Liquidity is going to be a little shorter than it might be for, say, a corporation. On the other hand, you're going to dictate that. You're going to provide a lot of direction with what you see being liquidity requirements. And then finally, yield. We want to maximize the value of the investment. And that is part of why, in my case, I've chosen somebody who I think is very good at all three of these areas and in then maximizing that investment. So, you know, some people will be like, okay, what is public institutional investing? And, I wanted to start off with, like, who doesn't know the stock market, right? The Fortune 500 and, buy low, sell high, we all know all about selling, buying stocks, right? But, and maybe we don't, but, stocks are the kind of investment that everyone understands. Bonds are a little less understood. And by the way, there's a lot of complexities in bonds. I won't get into that, but I will tell you that we are not buying corporate ownership, which is what a stock is. Yes, you can get yield out of a stock, but we are not in the business of buying and selling stocks. We're not in the business of buying and selling bonds either. But we are in the business of lending money. And that's what a bond is. It has different kind of ways that you can get the money back, the payback of it. It has different features that maybe allow you to keep it longer or not. But all in all, we are doing bond investing. That's it, bond investing. We're lending money. Bill, do you want to add anything more? And unlike anybody else in the room, including me, I'm not an institutional investor, but this gentleman is. So maybe give a little bit of an overview here.
Yeah, when it comes to institutional investing as opposed to personal investing, if you will, it's a different level where, number one, working with the clients, understanding their liquidity needs, et cetera, is very important. Number two, how you access the securities in the marketplace, knowing what platforms to look at, knowing what brokerage firms to talk to, et cetera, is very important. So that is a very big part of institutional investing. And finally, the most important thing is monitoring the portfolio, constant monitoring of the portfolio from a risk management perspective to make sure that we are 100+% compliant with state statutes, with investment policy statements, et cetera. All encompasses institutional investing, and that's what you'll be getting.
Great, thank you. So the next slide. This slide represents my life's accomplishment after a year of being treasurer. And so it may not look like much to you, but boy, I'm really proud of this slide. I worked really hard to get this to where it is. We took our beginning point. Now, we have even more money than this, by the way, but let me just talk about this one for the moment. So I walked in, and my predecessor really did a very fine job, but I added to it. So we came in with 51 million, and we more than doubled it to 109 at the end of the year. We're now, we were at 127 million, and now, if you're familiar with ARP, ARP is the American Recovery Reinvestment Act or something like that, where now we're giving people money again. Maybe MHB, I don't know if you guys got any ARP money. But what happens is they're paying down their portfolio. They're going from investing, and they made a lot of money investing that money. That's a good thing for McHenry County. But now they need the money to pay off their projects. So I want to point out a few things about the portfolio. So when I started, we had general funds, and the general fund, which is largely the taxation account, where we have a lot of our property tax go into, et cetera. We added to that, more than doubled that. You see, we made some, very significant dollars, the overall portfolio generating 4.19 million last year. But what I want to also add that we had Valley High and added to that, and transportation came in, and they said, we have an extra 24 million. We'd like to invest it. Well, they liked our results so much that they gave us another $3 million. And I remember having a portfolio meeting, which is something I do with all my clients, should you become a client, for example. And we have quarterly meetings. So one of the key transportation folks that I work with, Scott Henning, he said, you know, Donna, we've decided we want to increase the amount of money. We want to take it from 24 to 27 million. And I was like, oh, wow, that's great. I'm really excited, you know. This is wonderful, you know, continuing to build financial resources for the county. He goes, oh, it was a no-brainer, Donna. The last amount of money that you made for us, which was 1.25 million, he said, you just made enough money for me to buy a bridge. So, you know, it's that idea of what do you want to buy that's a continuing cost? What do you want to do to have like that annuity payment? And then what works for your organization and for the commitments you have to the community? But, you know, transportation is very happy with, you know, the direction we're going, and, you know, we're really pleased with what we've been able to add literally to the bottom line for the county. I want to mention that time is always moving forward and throwing little wrenches into what we have to deal with. And our interest rate trend has been fairly stable and up in the 5%, 4.5%, 5% level. You're probably hearing there's some trend changes in store. I'm going to let Bill talk about that.
Sure. As we all know, that when the Fed started hiking rates after 0% interest rate policy during the pandemic, they went from 0 to 5.5, 5.25, where we are right now. And so we've enjoyed wonderful higher interest rates for several years now. So it's one of the longest, most protracted Fed tightening cycles I've seen in 40 years. But we have seen weaker economic data, inflation's coming under control. So over the past 3 months, the market has built in, what we call built in, a lot of Fed easing over the next year, such that as of this moment, the market's projecting Fed funds to go from 5.5, 5.25, where it is now, to closer to 3%. So rates are definitely projected to go down. Whether or not they do, that's in the tea leaves. But I think it's important to realize that the 5%, the great yields we've been experiencing now are not going to last forever. And most importantly, when rates go lower, that's where you really got to get between the wall and the wallpaper to try and find those opportunities to get that much more yield to accomplish your ultimate goals of giving it away. So.
Yep. So, you know, the party hasn't ended. It just may not go on as long as we had hoped. So, we wanted to give each of you a bit of a perspective. So, Bill and I talked about two extremes, scenario 1 and scenario 2. Scenario 1 is like the child who gets the money and then spends it. Scenario 2 is like the child who gets the money and, you know, puts it into the bank. And both may have good reasons for what they're doing, given what they're trying to accomplish. But what happens with scenario 1, where we have the $5 million that comes in, and we've just simplified it and said, let's say that it was invested at 4.75, and each year we see the different kind of income that is achieved. Why is that? Because when we spend, we have less to invest. And so scenario 1 In the end, we see just under $600,000, and let's just go to the summary. The next slide. And so what we see is keeping funds fully invested for a 5-year period with the assumptions that I initiated this with. You know, we're walking away with about $1.3 million in income over a 5-year period compounded. Scenario 2, where we are not keeping it all invested, but rather we are withdrawing and having an annual withdrawal. We produce literally a fraction. So scenario 2, when we're able to do a fully invested scenario, we achieve substantially more in income. And it all makes sense, but when you put a pencil to it, you know, you really start to crystallize on the value that you can offer your constituents, in this case, you know, the DASA, MI, and DD populations that you serve. Potentially, this is a way to do it, to create additional income. So that is largely what I wanted to talk about. And, you know, I really hope you have some questions for me, because when you're done asking me questions, I'm going to have some for you. So why don't you guys, you know, give us your best shot here. We're right here waiting for them. The questions, that is.
I'll go first. Can you tell me, Donna, what, let's say in your scenario 2, if we had an emergency and we did need to access those dollars, what kinds of penalties would there be for needing the dollars before they hit their maturity date?
Yes, so the idea of penalties is something that we think about when we invest in CDs. In the case of bonds, the price of a bond will vary with the interest rate environment. So I may lose money on the face value if I need to sell a bond before it matures, or I might make money. And so it really depends on the interest rate. So if the interest rate out in the environment is actually higher than my bond, then my bond, should I want to sell it early, I'd lose money on the face value. How much? It depends on what that differential is. And then the inverse is true as well. So, you know, people ask me that all the time, and it's a fair question. But my response is, it's just like anything else. If you plan ahead and you have your various buckets of how you intend to spend your money, you have your forecasted budgets out several years, you have your known budget that you've signed up for, then all of a sudden, knowing how much money is actually available to invest, it becomes, you know, just an exercise and you know, should make decision-making relatively easy. But the planning is very important. The discussion is very important. The work you've done with your budget is directly applicable to knowing how much you may have available. And then you do the what-ifs. But the last thing I would ever encourage anyone is, oh, well, you know, just give me this much and we'll go with it. Or no. No, because my job is to make sure you've got the liquidity you need to achieve the goals you want to achieve.
Go ahead.
Talk in the microphone.
Talk in the mic, please.
Your projection was like 5% now, and then, I don't know, after the first of the year, it's like 3% I saw in the, I don't know, in one of them.
Yes. Yeah, here, let's go back, Connie. Yeah, the projection was 4.75, and that's because we have some people that want us to invest right away. You know, so we just put together a scenario with that. We can change that percent, but the point is simply the amount of money that you make if you're fully invested versus, you know, doing in a situation where you're not fully invested is substantial. That's really the point of it, not to say, hey, here's how much you'll make.
Right,
Yes.
okay. And I thought maybe some had to do with some of the election too coming up and all that, no?
You know, I don't think that the
No?
election is really going to make a difference.
Okay.
At this point, I think that what the Fed does is they look at the economic environment and they raise interest rates if they see that's a way to, one of their strongest ways to slow down the economy, which minimizes inflation. And we've had just horrific inflation. So that is one of their major tools for that. And now we're seeing inflation dissipating. We're seeing, as Bill mentioned, a weakening economy where employment numbers, for example, are slowing. They're off their peak, and other economic indicators. So the Fed is saying, yeah, we can start to ease off on our current interest rates.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Connie.
So my question is kind of directed towards Mr. Gregg. You're strictly fixed income. Does state statute for the money that we have allow us to invest it in any equities?
No.
Okay. So,
No. Only fixed income, and within that realm, there are very specific guidelines.
okay, and that's statutorily, correct?
Correct. Very high quality, A-rated, et cetera. Yeah. So they're really, really strict. Yep. Good question.
But you know what? I was just looking at the Illinois funds, totally different from us. They actually invest, I think it's like 30% in corporate bonds. We are limited, if we do corporate bonds, we're limited to 10% for 3 years duration.
And,
I
and the
just
reason I
was
ask
like,
is because like the police pension, they
Yeah.
can invest in equities.
Yes.
And, but that's why,
Absolutely.
that was where my
But-
question
but-
started. There's more opportunities there.
I've managed police and fire funds before they all went downstate to Springfield. So, yeah, and Sawyer Faldudo and all these consultants, yeah, they come in. That's a pension fund.
Yeah.
So different, yeah.
I didn't know if we were statutory allowed to do that. Okay.
No, good question.
And you know, the other issue with the pension fund is pensions are being invested out for durations that can go out decades, where we are not in that same bailiwick. You know, we're looking at 3-year kind of
Yep, it's a
durations.
quicker turnaround time, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, thanks.
Donna, I have a question. What is, assuming our board would make a decision to do an investment, what is the timeline like for that?
Well, the timeline is what you want to do. You know, how soon do you want to make investments? How long do you want those investments to be available? We can talk about what other portfolios are doing and their characteristics, and you can get a sense from what they're doing. And so you know, I give you guys the car keys and say, you know, show me where you want to go, and that's where we're going.
If I can clarify, if I said I want to give you this much money today, how long before we'd know it was in the market and doing its thing?
It would take us a couple of days to set up our custodial account. And then it would take us a few days to transfer it. I think within 10 days, we could probably have some investments underway.
Yes, it depends. It depends on the strategy. So let's say you wanted the most liquid strategy, which is cash plus 0 to 1 year. So that can get ramped up, i.e. that can get fully invested pretty quickly. But if you do like a 2-year to 3-year strategy, that takes a little bit longer because there's more security, you know, it just is harder to find all the securities as fast. So it depends on the kind of strategy, but in general, you know, it takes a couple of weeks max to get all set up.
I think that you also said we have to decide to put so much liquid and so much investment. I mean, we're not going to invest it all because we may need it. I mean, I really liked what you said, Donna.
Yeah.
It's like, we need to really sit down and say how much we want to invest and how much we're keeping aside to help agencies.
Right, right. And there's another way, and there's some middle ground in there, Connie, which is really a good thing. And that is that, let's say that you're like, well, we have this amount of money, but we're going to be spending it down. So we want to make sure that we still have that same amount of money in 6 months. Well, guess how long the duration of potentially that money that you are investing will be?
Right.
Or a portion of it. It'll be 6 months to
Right.
make sure that your runoff is going to be hitting those dates. And that's something that you work with us on, and then we literally come and show you the quarterly cash flow streams. And, I should have put that in. I was just working on something for Valley High today. I should have put that one in there. But we can tell you how much money is going to be available, either in principal and interest, for a given month. So you know what it is. But the key is that you're going to tell me at the onset of the process what you need. Now, you could tell me in increments of a quarter, or you could tell me in increments of a month, or you could tell me in increments of a year.
Hey, Donna, can you explain, I know we had conversations on this, but can you explain to the board or to the finance committee what Valley High, how they're utilizing their investments?
That's, thanks, Leo. That is a situation that we just met with them today. And they actually, and Carolyn, I'm sure you've seen this before, Scott Hartman has developed a cash flow model. And that is based on the income that comes in, very similar to you guys, and then the various costs that are associated with their budget. And by the way, there's a variability there because some of their patient types, and you can relate to this, some of your patient types are different. If a patient type is a Medicaid patient, then they potentially are bringing in less money than a private insurance person. So they have projections of cash flow in, and then they also have cash flow projections of what's going out. And that includes both operating and capital expenditures. The capital expenditure at this time is the memory care unit. And so what they wanted to do, the conversation we had was, well, we understand what you're looking for. Now we need some time to work through to get back with you to let you know how much more money or less money you can have to invest. So we've got another meeting set up. I think it's October 8th. And it's a decision point meeting. I said, can we make it a decision point meeting where you're going to come in and be able to comfortably tell us what your cash flows in and out are expected, and then we'll have an idea of whether or not we need to be rolling off money or bringing money in and having Bill put it to work with appropriate bonds.
So from what I understand, the difference between Valley High and the other investment options, or the other investments that you're making for the county, is that Valley High is utilizing a share of their, what they've gained in their investments in their operations. So they take it out, is it quarterly, or do they take it out yearly?
They take it when they want.
Okay.
I mean, we right now have, and Leo, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be coy or, just, casual about your question. We have been working on moving to our new investment model. And so we're literally in a regrouping. But we have had direction from them of what they needed, specifically to your point, and that's a good one, regarding their capital expenditures. Their operating monies have actually been far less because they got a Medicaid increase. They were being paid about $165 a day for a Medicaid patient. Now they're getting $500 a day. So their cash flow is just like crazy good. On the other hand, we don't know how long that's going to last. So there's just, this model is just like mind-blowing, you know, there's a lot of detail in it. But it's the kind of thing that if you go through the motions of, you know, asking yourself, you know, what is our budget? What expenditures do we know we will have? When do I expect the invoices? When do I have to have that money in hand? All of a sudden, it's an easier conversation.
Yeah,
Is
and
it-
I don't think
yeah.
for us it's about cash flow.
Yeah,
It's about meeting the needs of the community.
Yeah.
And that's where we're still catching up. We're not able to meet the needs of the community. So, so that's more the issue. It's not the cash flow, but it's what we're budgeting for the year for our providers.
sure.
And again, we're not keeping up yet. We're still not there.
Yes.
So
And-
that's where something like this, I know it's the less attractive model, to use some of your investment dollars, but until we're able to, year over year, the sales tax increases, until we're able to catch up to that,
Yeah.
the less attractive model may serve us best.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you are dealing with literally saving lives, and that has to be a consideration. Let me also put my financial advisor hat on and say that having the annuity that has some substantive returns is also a tremendous way to fight off the inflation that may come down the pike, where you don't have the cash flow that you wanted, and you do have significant amounts of annuity payments that are being generated that allow you to maintain a certain funding level because of a longer-term strategy. But ultimately, you guys will know the right way to go.
Carolyn, thanks. And I appreciate those comments. First, I want to just say, kind of going back to, thank you for the work that you've actually done, because we've seen a great deal of the return on your hard work. So I
thanks,
think that's
Carolyn.
been really nice, a nice little bonus at the end when we see those investments and how successful they've been. So I'm assuming that because you were handling the property tax before, and that's where we saw it through, and now with this shift in sales tax,
Yes.
it's kind of why we have this additional layer of decision-making.
Yes.
And on top of it, having that overlap, which we've kind of talked about too, we're going to have, that's kind of a separate category, in my opinion. And that may be more in line with kind of that fully being able to invest that for the long term and making a full investment versus taking a portion of that. So am I right in assuming those are kind of two different conversations that we can have on how to handle like the regular sales tax moving forward, and then handling that separate funding overlap that we might, we call it overlap,
Right.
although.
Well, and that's where, we will invest, per your direction. Leo asked us to come in at the onset because of the exact same thing that you just mentioned, Carolyn. The whole idea of, hey, we have double booked income coming in over the next 5 months. We don't know how much it will be yet, but we do know that it's double income in some form. And, we could look at trends from other, income streams for sales over the last year or something. If you guys wanted to do that, we could do that, just to get an idea. But, it all comes down to, do you need to spend it now, or do you want to build up your portfolio and have a a constant income stream. And that's ultimately what your board will decide, and we'll invest it accordingly. You know, we're always going to ask, do you have enough money to pay your bills? Do you have enough money to meet the needs of your constituent? And then, you know, I have full faith in the MHB as it's constituted that you'll make those decisions, and we'll invest accordingly. But I do not tell you what to spend or not to spend. That would be crazy town.
So along those lines, and I appreciate those comments, because along those lines, you've, it's been said a couple times that we'll make those decisions. And obviously, this is new to us because you were handling it under property tax before. So
Yes.
with like a Valley High, or even, how are others, or how do you see this, the decision coming from? Like the board as a whole, and I don't know if, you know, you've had these conversations, like, is it coming from staff? Is it coming from our committee? Is it coming
Right.
from the board? Do you, how
Yes.
do you normally handle it?
Yeah, great question, and I'll tell you specifically how it works. I won't you know, hypothesize. Pete and Carrie, so the CFO and the county administrator, they make the decisions regarding the general fund and ARPA. Scott Hennings and Joe Kropowski, they make the decisions regarding transportation. And ultimately, Tom Anarilla, but he works very closely with Scott Hartman, they make the decisions regarding their portfolio. My recommendation would be that I work with your executive director. And I know you've already told me that you would want me to be coming to your board and giving presentations and giving quarterly updates and whatever. But ultimately, that is the responsibility of the board to decide how those things get done. But that has worked very, very well. Like, and here to be even more specific, we don't have finance and audit involved in the decision making because it would just be crazy town. Again, another crazy town.
And are you
So-
talking like those kind of very specific decisions, or like, are you talking the general kind of guidelines of that? How, you know, how much, how long, what percentage? Are you talking,
Yeah.
do they kind of set a policy per se in place at first, and then
Yeah.
the executive director, and you execute that policy?
Yeah, and that is just really, really excellent in helping me to explain this better. So the way that we meet with them is we show them the distributions. Here are your distributions coming up. And so in our last conversation, you said you wanted to reinvest this. So that's what we're going to be doing. We had that conversation today with Valley High. They've got like $350 million in cash right now. 350,000. Yeah, and so all in all, it's going to be about 1.2 million in the next 2 months or something, 2-3 months. So we're saying, hey, do you want to invest this, or do you have expenditures? And then they are going to get back with us and say, we'll need this amount of money, invest the rest. And what we will do then, specifically Bill, will then build a laddered portfolio that allows us to have the return of principal and interest occurring in a laddered fashion. So we see that spread out. Unless they were to say, no, we want all that money in 2028.
So kind of based on their annual budget as well as their like capital improvement plan, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. But the investment, our process is the same for, sales tax versus property tax. We just invest the money with the understanding of when.
When you need it.
Yeah.
Right, so that's what you are currently doing
Yes.
under that umbrella, and then you knew when you needed it over that
Yes,
6-month
and
increments.
exactly. And
Okay.
right now with Valley High, they are reassessing their model. They haven't maintained their model in a few areas. We, on the other hand, haven't met with them because we were moving to this new investment environment. So now we're all in sync. We had this meeting, and now we have next steps established. We will make some decisions October 8th when we meet. And that's being done with the two individuals. However you wanted to do it. I mean, if Leo said, no, this is the approach, then we'll do it that way. In the end, I just need to have direction, and then we'll meet your needs, because ultimately we want you to have the money when you want the money, with the amount you want.
So this is something that is kind of new for you to start?
Oh, no,
Oh.
and I apologize. It isn't new, it's that we are resetting the process, and the reasons are, and I'll tell you because it'll make a little more sense. They decided they were going to decrease their reserves. Okay, that gave us more money. So I wanted to check with them today. Do you still want to keep those reserves at 5 months? Another question was, what is the status of your capital expenditure? And they share it with me. They have 1.25 million remaining. Okay, when are you going to need that money? I mean, do you need it right now? Oh, no, we need it spread out. Okay, when? Because we'll invest accordingly. So, those were some of the resetting.
Okay.
But the dialogue that we're just talking about right now, that is how we do it.
Yeah.
It's the same old thing. It's
Which
new
is great.
answers.
And then
Yeah.
just so moving forward, I mean, and I don't know if, Lindsay or Connie, I just think that we as a board need to set some sort of policy, in particular that, the annual budget versus those extra overlap months that we're going to be seeing, and how we want to move forward in the policy.
That-
And then kind of hand that down, because to just make sure that we're all
Yeah.
kind of on the same as far as, I think there's potential for that long-term full lump in there,
Yeah.
and then.
And I think, and I'll just throw that out there, once again, this is one option for those overlap dollars. We wanted to just kind of talk about it as an option. And then, later we'll have discussions about what's even available and what that looks like and why talk about it now. But I agree, we would, want to have those conversations about, where that authority lies and what makes sense.
I think a lot of that can be addressed in an investment policy for the mental health board as to what we're allowed to do, how we're allowed to do it, who has the authority to do that. And that it can be as strict or as loose as we want it to be, but then it would have some governance on what we're doing, excuse me, and how much money is available at a given time that keeps our cash position in a safe spot so we can pay our bills and so we can continue to have money for emergency situations or access that liquidity that we're talking about. One other question, what fees are there involved for us? If
Yeah,
is that based on a annual contribution that you guys are going to invest? What
Yeah.
base points are we at?
So-
Where are we at with that?
Right, so the fees are 12 basis points, and that is just taken out of the investments. So you never see it, and it's, you bill quarterly, don't you? Is it quarterly? Monthly, okay, yeah.
Based on the NAV
Yeah.
at the end of the month, the value of the assets, but not including accrued interest. So there's the value of the bonds and accrued interest. We only charge on the value of the bonds, not accrued interest. 12 basis points.
Yeah.
Which, to give you an actual number on $1 million investment, okay, that's $100 a month. It's pretty cheap.
Yeah, and in this vendor-customer relationship, I have to buy him lunch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For that, I would.
No, but really, if you, it really is, I did negotiate pretty significantly for the 12 basis points, not so much with you, but with the other vendor. And it's a very fair price. If you look at a bond fund that's actively managed, you won't see anything at 12 basis points, that's for sure. Maybe an ETF, but then again, it's not actively managed. So, and we're able to achieve a lot of specific things that you can't achieve with a bond fund, for example. So it's tailored. It's tailored to you guys. So, yep.
I know we're going to have further discussion about whether or not this is something we want to do, any policies we'd want to put into place, but are there specific additional questions that we have for them?
Yeah.
I just think, from listening to everything, we have these overlap dollars that we should look at what we need on hand to make our bills and whatever, and for emergencies, and invest. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. If we can make money to help agencies and people in this community, I think we should do it.
And the other thing to think about too is, we do want to invest sooner versus than later.
Right.
Because as you saw, the interest rates are going to go down and we want to lock. So if our first overlap funds is coming in October,
Right.
I would think that we'd want to invest in October. So I know you're talking about policies, procedures, so forth, but I would think we'd want to lock in and invest when we're getting these overlap dollars.
I think it's up to you and Melanie to say, this is what we need to operate, okay? And this is what we need for emergencies.
We don't need it to operate right now.
Okay, well then,
What
to
we need,
invest.
but what we need though is how to infuse dollars in the year into our current budget. We do need that. So we do need an infusion, because our sales tax is not enough. We
Well,
need,
it's never gonna be.
well, but we need dollars to infuse yearly into, but it's up to, if you want to invest it all. I mean, I know the county board was against us having a large fund balance. This is just adding to fund balance, which is wonderful. But what we need is infusion into our yearly budget. That's what our mental health board needs. I know, again, it's not how I invest personally. It's not how I'd like to, but we don't have any large capital projects right now. There's nobody knocking at our door to open up an inpatient adolescent unit at the moment. That could come at some point in the future, but what we're needing is, again, an infusion in our annual budget. And if the dollars can do that, that's great. It's up to this board. I'm not advocating either way. We could block it all up and have it go and just invest in it. It's just, I think the board needs to decide, what is it that we need? What's our priority? And I know I've shared with you my thoughts, but that's all I can do.
Yeah, and I would suggest bringing it back to the board, so that's why, again, return to Connie or Lindsay on the level, because I think that is a big discussion that needs to be had at the board level.
Yeah. And part of this is, I've had some conversations with both Leo and Mel about doing that. And I think the very last page of our packet had some of her kind of early estimates of what she saw as possible. And as far as Leo's comment regarding, can we act sooner to try to yield the better investment, we had also, the next item on our list was to look at our fund balance policy and whether or not we would want to borrow from dollars we have today versus waiting until overlap dollars hit our accounts.
The
So
overlap
there's
is coming in October, right?
Right.
So, I mean,
some of it, yeah. So not all of it, though.
No,
It'll
not
be
all
a multi-month process. So February or March, we would be all caught up with the overlap dollars.
Yeah, so July's investment, or July sales tax revenue is coming in October. So if you want to think of it as a 3-4 month lag. So, we'll have July, August, September, those 3 months coming in by December. And then after that, our first sales tax for '25 is going to hit in
February.
February.
Can't you invest incrementally?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to have it all.
Oh, no, I agree.
Correct.
That's what we want to do. We want a ladder.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we would like to ladder.
Yeah. And that's, like you said, a bigger conversation, I think, to have to the board. And my feeling on this is this was an introductory conversation for us to ask the right questions. And I would sort of stand with the concept that, our executive director and team would come together with something they thought made the most sense to present to us. And obviously, we could maybe try to get a policy done as soon as possible as well. So, once again, are there any further questions for Donna?
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing this to us, and thank you for
Oh,
coming
yeah.
and your information.
Hey,
That's
it's
great.
on the way home. It's great. It's not on the way home for him, but,
Yeah, I thought it was really important because we are
Yeah.
getting the overlap dollars.
oh, we're proud to be here. We really are. It's kind of cool for me for many reasons. So let me, I had a couple of quick comments and questions. How many months do you have in your fund balance at this time?
The policy is 5 months.
5 months? Right? Yeah, and for what it's worth, that's really reasonable. That's what Valley High has too, so that's great. Secondly, I would say, if you want to get an invitation out, you want to get together before, I think it's like October 18th, that would be great because that's when the Fed meets again, and then they'll be doing another 25 basis point cut, or so we think, okay, per that chart that I sent you. So something to think about. I would encourage you to be looking, though, at that second week of October. That also happens to be what Valley High decided to do. And the last thing I want to make sure that you conceptualize is if you say, hey, invest this money, you can say, hey, by this date, we need this amount of money free. We need it to spend on XYZ. Well, Bill is going to be looking for bonds that fulfill that obligation. And if he comes into play with something that is close to that, and it's a really attractive situation, if he feels it's appropriate, he'll reach out to me, I'll reach out to you, and you'll at least have that consideration. I mean, we've done that before with transportation. And if it's like, nope, we're solid, we want it on this date, we will ladder that money appropriately. So there's many ways to induce liquidity, but the key is the planning aspect of it. That is the key. So, anyway.
Great.
That's all I got, folks, so.
Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Lindsay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. I'll call you later, Ray. And great seeing all you guys. This is really neat. I hope you feel better, Connie.
I'm going to heal fast.
Yeah, I know you will. I know. Go home and do some push-ups. Yeah. All right. Well,
Okay.
you guys, thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
listen,
Thank you, Donna.
For what it's worth, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
This is a big deal. My parents worked on getting that referendum passed in 1970, and my dad was a social worker who was a recipient of those funds in his capacity as a manager at Family Service. So, what you're doing is what makes McHenry County a little bit more special than just anywhere else in the world. So, thanks. I know it's a hard job, too. I've been to some of the distribution meetings. Oh, my God, you guys, you work so hard and you put in so much time. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
Donna.
very much, Leo.
I will move on to 6B. I had asked to review our fund balance policy for a couple of reasons. One, we had made a early decision that we would not reevaluate the 5-month fund balance policy until we knew more about the sales tax, because it's been a consideration that we might not need to hold 5 months in fund balance reserves with the way the cash flow works for the sales tax. And I'm going to ask Mel to talk a little bit more about that and the spreadsheet afterwards. And then additionally, just wanted to confirm that there is nothing in our fund balance reserve policy that states that we cannot put those into investments. So we won't have to modify our fund balance reserve policy if we ever did want to take a portion of our fund balance and put it into an investment.
So you're saying we should never have 5 months in that fund balance, is that what you're saying?
Nope, I'll start over because,
Okay, I'm just trying to
nope.
understand.
Two things. One, we're able to invest fund balance dollars if we want to. Two, the reason I had brought this up is that at some point in the future, we had plans in the Finance Committee to review this policy with the sales tax cash flow being different than property tax cash flow. There may be a reason we could reduce the number of months that we would have as our policy expectation. However, after consulting with Leo and Mel, they really wanted to wait until maybe, midsummer of next year to see how the cash flow was working. But because of this investment opportunity discussion, I wanted to re-bring up this fund balance policy to state that it could be a topic of discussion sooner if we thought it needed to be. And then additionally, I asked Mel to tell us kind of early look at, what the needs are for a 5-month or less reserve. So I'll kind of move it over to you to kind of share that information as it might pertain to how much money would be available to invest if we decided we did want to move forward with an investment option.
You know why it was 5 months way back when?
Because of the
Reason that-
timing of the sales tax. And that's still the case, or, I'm sorry, not sales tax, property tax. And that's
Okay.
still kind of the case that we're
Right,
operating on. We still need that fund balance reserve to basically operate. That's our operating cash right now for the first 5 months of the year. So, Eric, you want to put the next slide up, or next page up? So the first column on this spreadsheet is our cash balance. So first off, the cash balance at 9/11, we received on 9/16 today, we received another 3,381,000 to that cash balance. So we're currently at $8,812,691, not that 543, but that's all kind of factored in. So like right now, we're at 8.8 million in cash, and for the rest of the year, I'm predicting we need about 3.1 million. So that leaves us, with excess cash available, but, that's still fund balance. But what Lindsay and I had talked about, Lindsay, Leo, and I had talked about was potentially borrowing some of the current cash to invest earlier while we're waiting for the sales tax disbursements. So just letting you guys know that that is, a potential thing you could do is invest, say 4 million in one lump sum versus staggering the million as the sales tax comes in to take advantage of a better, take advantage of a better interest rate, for example. But anyhow, I'm projecting that by the end of January, we would have, without investing, $8.7 million in cash. And just to kind of let you know, the sales tax revenue I'm projecting is most likely going to be higher than what I'm showing, because the only numbers I have are the county CST tax, which I've been told is not as much as what we're getting. They're not taxing on as many items. So I've used that as an average for what they got for the first 3 months to kind of give an idea of what we're going to get for a month. But so I'm projecting on the low side that sales tax revenue. So there is potential for, higher cash balance. So any question on the cash balances at this time?
No, I'll just comment, though, that I agree with staying with the 5 months, especially, for that first year and not knowing how it's going to come in and out and when you're going to need it where.
Right. So the thing that is different with the sales tax is we will get distributions for 25 starting in February. So we won't have that, we'll have a 2-month delay instead of a 5-month delay.
Right.
But we also don't know, some months we're going to get 900,000, some months we'll get over $1 million. So it kind of varies. So that's kind of where you want the balance. So in the next column, I kind of looked at our current 5-month reserve, where we'd be, and if we had changed it to a 4-month reserve. And basically what the numbers I'm showing is we'd have 3.8 million in excess funds over what we need for the budget, and the 5-month reserves. So if we kept the 5-month policy, we could still safely invest about $4 million, because like I said, these are on the low side because we're probably going to get more revenue than that. So if we went to the 4-month reserve and kept 4 months expenses in the account, we would have right around $5 million to invest. And we all had the understanding that we were going to get 5 months overlap. We're really only getting 4. So we're getting the October, November, December, and January payments are going to be our overlap. And then starting in February, that's going to be our fiscal year 25 revenue. So there's really only $4 million in overlap funds.
I think we should keep the 5 months. I really do.
But did you hear what Melanie, though, said, is that we only have 4 million of overlap funds to invest in, where originally we thought it was going to be more.
Right. So if you did want to invest $5 million, you would need to adjust your reserve policy. So otherwise, we would have about 4 million we could invest. And that all comes down to the timing. We thought we were going to start getting, an installment in September, but we're really not getting it until October. And we can only use 60 days, cash received 60 days after the year end can be counted towards this year's revenue. So that's where we're getting the 4 months instead of the 5 that we thought.
I didn't think did we have a dollar amount on there? Did we have a $5 million already set? I mean, if it was based on a projection, but.
We were projecting we were going to get at least $1 million.
Oh,
per
okay.
month.
I guess I missed
Yeah,
that
based
projection
on-
because I was always just waiting and seeing what we
Yeah.
got.
Well,
So.
See, that's the whole problem we're having. We're, the only thing we can base our numbers off of really is something we're being told is lower than what we're getting. So based on what they're getting an average of, 1,016,000 a month. So we're hoping we're getting more than that, but, we think $1 million a month is a safe number for those 4 months overlap. So.
I think the reason that we kind of hustled to do this is mostly because we all know we'd love to have better information. But it was really about the potential decline in investment returns of why we sort of pushed this conversation and looked at alternative options, to get us there if we wanted to take advantage of this. And I know Leo has told me, the question I always ask is, was there something else that we could do with those dollars, right? Because that's really the question too, is this is an option, but the full board really should have some guidance on what those dollars would be used for. But in the absence of any concrete plan, not taking advantage of an investment opportunity, seems like an unwise choice. And I know Leo said there was just really nothing big spending, options in the picture that made sense. I know we also talked about our current interest rate and just our checking account.
Our current interest rate is 5.48%. So it's like you feel like you shouldn't invest because we're getting so much, but, as Donna talked, that interest rate is going to be dropping, or that's expected. So it's kind of like hard to lock it in at 4% when you're already getting 5.4, so.
Right.
Well, I think if we could make money on our money to help, our whole thing is to help agencies. And that's what we're supposed to do, money in, money out. And if we can make money, we should do it. And I think it's up to the two of you to look at how much we need, how much we can invest, and come back and bring it to the board.
I think it's also important we are responsible with that investment too, and
Right.
not just jump at the first thing that's offered to us. I'm sure there's other companies out there that we could ask for a presentation that doesn't cost.
No, everything
No.
has to be done through the
Yeah.
county treasurer.
No.
We are not allowed to
the
invest on
county.
our own.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow,
Yeah.
never mind then.
So as far as next steps would be concerned, perhaps asking for our next board meeting, a presentation from staff on what an actual proposed amount of investment, some sort of planning presentation. You know, the way she talked about, you know, would you want money along the way? What would that look like? And I don't even know if that's just too soon, quite honestly. But it seems like that is a reasonable next step. And then additionally, some sort of oversight policy or parameters, which I would love to believe we might be able to borrow from somewhere else in the county.
And I wonder if Valley High has something, or transportation has some sort of investment policy that,
I'll check with Carrie at the county.
say-
Yeah.
I'm sure she has it, and just as, hey, do you have an outline for us or something like that? What guidelines do they go off of, you know?
Mhm.
But that, in that way, in the investment policy, we could say, whatever the board decides as far as how much we want to keep in reserves for cash, that can be done. The policy isn't the hard part, the
Right.
determining factor is how much are you going to put in? You don't want to be cash poor, but you want to have funds available to that, and this is, it's investment in timing, but let's not, I mean, it's a long-term layering that we're looking at, if this is what we're going to be doing, if we're going to having continual income. You can, you know, it's dollar cost averaging, it's how much are we going to do a year if it's, you know, $100 a month versus $1,000 a month, that's a big difference. If it's 900,000 and 901,000, we're not talking about a lot here, so. It's just a matter of what our total goal is.
I think in particular, dividing out those two, you know, that one is kind of a day-to-day or month-to-month conversation versus like that, you know, the overlap dollars. I think that's where you're gonna really see the more significant dollars that you can invest.
Right. And that's pretty much what you're at with
That's all
with the
we-
5-month
I
reserve.
guess.
Right.
You're only looking at investing those overlap funds for the 4 months.
Right, and I guess that, I mean, and I think that the decision then, that, I don't know, whoever wants to weigh in on is, do you take from the fund reserves in anticipation of what those funds are gonna be and invest those now up front to repay those? I mean, that is, I mean, that to me is the only immediate decision that
Right.
we really should be talking about.
Yes.
And, you know, you can estimate what that's gonna be. I mean, and I don't, like you said, 5 million is not the right number, but, you know, whatever that number might be, that would be my personal thought on discussing. I think the ins and outs and that daily, you know, month-to-month operation and the fund balance moving forward on, you know, if you're gonna invest part of it or not, I think that's a future conversation that can be had, so I would
agree.
just, you know, suggest maybe having that conversation at the next meeting if we want, or how you might want to do it, if we're going to take from the current fund balance and anticipate. But that's just me.
So are you saying for the September board meeting?
You know, I think it would be whatever time frame you need to make a concrete plan, you know, in association with whatever Donna would have to say that could be presented to us.
Do it like the first one in October or something too, if you need
Yeah.
more time, because she really needs 10 days. And so that
Yes.
would, but the October 8th. So that first one, it probably could catch it too, because you can always, it's already scheduled. You can put that on the agenda if you wanted to add it first thing or something. But
Yeah, if there was a concrete plan for overlap dollars to state what the actual number is, you know, and if we want to put that to a vote to take from fund balance reserve, knowing that it'll get replenished by early next year with sales tax dollars, whatever that number is, I think that's a decision to make. And like you said, we can follow up with long-term planning.
I believe because of the high liquidity of these funds, that we should look at investing as much as possible. And I'm concerned if we wait until the October meeting, again, we're going to fall behind the Federal Reserve meeting, which she stated was on the 18th, and it'll definitely swing at that point. So I think we should look at investing the most we can and not do tranches or ladders at this point. We know we have the funds, and if we get stuck, we can pull the funds because they're highly liquid.
Yeah. So if possible for this month's meeting, then we would be ahead of her date, so. Any other discussion or direction?
I just have to tell you, I have physical therapy on my shoulder at 6, so.
Yeah.
But I agree with what they're saying. We should invest right away.
Great. Any further discussion? No? Okay, then a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.